Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. And have I got a very special guest for all of us today? As we're on the verge of 1 year wrapping up and another year almost upon us, it's a really good time for us to reflect at what's gone by in 2019 and what lies ahead in 2020. And who knows what's around the corner. We always talk about the world being upside down, bizarro land, and it gets worse by the day. We've got protests in France today being described as some of the worst in their history. Hong Kong all kicking off over there. Brexit in the UK, no deal, deal, remain. Who knows what's happening? And at the same time, we've got a general election going on. And then next year, we've got the the US election happening. So I can't think of a better guest to bring on to give us his take on everything that's gone by, everything that's going to come, than the man himself. Yes, Gerald Celente. And as the founder of the Trends Research Institute, Gerald Celente is a well-respected for his track record in picking business, consumer, political and economic trends before they come to pass. It's his job to see the future and understand how the issues of and events of today will determine the trends of tomorrow. I like to look at Gerald as future-proofing us for the year ahead. Gerald, welcome back, sir.
Oh, thanks for having me. And of course, we also have the Trends Journal magazine, which is now a weekly. It went from a monthly to a weekly because events are happening so rapidly with such wide implications. So now we've gone to a weekly magazine. And I must say, there's no magazine in the world like it. You mentioned about the current events forming future trends. Most of the mainstream media just reports on junk news. And so what we do is we say what's happening, what it means, and where it's going. And knowledge is power, and that's what the people need now to prepare, prevail, and prosper in the times ahead.
Absolutely. And over the years I've been doing this show, over the years of listening to you, sir, Alex Jones, David Icke, others out there, the New World Order is something that's never far away from our minds, but you came up with a perfect term in one of your latest videos, and it's New World Disorder, right?
That's right. No, it's you started mentioning it. You were talking about what's going on in France right now, what's going on in Hong Kong, what's going on in Spain, what's going on in Lebanon, what's going on in Sudan, what's going on in Algeria, what's going on in Chile, what's going on in Colombia. How about Bolivia? What about Peru? How about Argentina? Look at Venezuela. It's one after another. I've been in this business now 40 years. Just a couple of weeks, it'll be 40 years that I've been doing this, and I've never seen anything like this in my life.
Gerald, where would you say we are right now? Because I can't see things getting much crazier than they already are. How much further do things have to fall? How much worse does it get before we see some kind of rebound into some common sense and normality?
Well, there's not going to be common sense and normality when you have people that are mentally ill running and ruining a country near you. I just mentioned all these other countries, and it's like that everywhere. Or Malta, they just threw him out. Corruption, crime, murdering a journalist who was reporting it. So Malta. I mean, these and I forgot what's going on in Iraq too, where they kill over 500 people that are demonstrating against the poverty, the violence, and corruption brought to them by the United States and the UK. Nobody talks about that in 2003 on a war based on lies. Where is it going? It's heading toward World War III. That's where it's going. And they're not taking measures to deal with this. The governments are cracking down harder and harder, becoming more and more militaristic. And my saying, when people lose everything and have nothing left to lose, they lose it. They have nothing left to lose. They're losing it. It's very clear. And it's just going to continue to get worse. And there's going to be the false flag are real. And I say false flag are real, and that's not a conspiracy theory, because after all, the Vietnam War, the Gulf of Tonkin incident never happened. Never happened. A total lie. Saddam Hussein has weapons of mass destruction and ties to Al-Qaeda. Never happened. A total lie. but they get people wrapped up in the total lies and they buy them. And in the Western world, you can see what's happening with the hatred that they're building against Russia and China. And so they're preparing us, as I see it, for the next world war. And this world war will be like the one that Einstein predicted. They asked him, what kind of weaponry will be used in the Third World War? And he said, I don't know. He said, but I know they'll be using sticks and stones in the fourth.
You're absolutely right. When I look at the UK, and I'm an ex-soldier, so I'm well placed here, but we don't have an army, a navy anymore. It took us 24 hours, Gerald, an island nation, to respond to Russian warships just off our coast. It's ridiculous. So you're right. You know, they've pulled back on all the troops. And of course, over here in the UK, there's always talk of an EU army, you know. And I want to get your thoughts, really, because it's crazy living in the UK right now. Project Fear, it's always underway, telling us that the sky is going to fall if we leave the EU. All this nonsense, absolute crap. And then we've got bumbling Johnson miles ahead in the polls. What's your take on the UK looking from the outside in, Gerald?
I mean, the FU, and then you throw a C in there, K. Is that the one you're talking about?
Pretty much so, sir, yeah.
Yeah, no, it's, look at the freaks. Corbyn, Johnson, you know, Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck. What's the difference? Low-life human beings. Look, May before that. Cameron, Blair. Look at the pieces of crap that have been running and ruining the country. And it's every country. A little Son Macron over there in France. I mean, it's every country. We got Trump over here before we had him, the Nobel Peace of Crap Prize winner, Obama. Look what he did to Syria, Libya. You know, there's sick people running the shows. And they're going to destroy their countries. And you talked about the fear in the United States. It's fear and terror all the time. You get felt up everywhere you go. And now they're putting, well, the UK has more surveillance cameras per capita than anywhere else in the world.
Yeah, even George Orwell, he couldn't imagine just how bad it would get over here. And of course, as well as all this going on, we're living in a time where 2 + 2 = 5. In so many instances, you know, biology doesn't determine gender anymore. The world's going crazy, man.
I know. And we're going into 2020, and again, it's the new world disorder. It's out of control, and no one's talking about it and putting the whole picture together other than us. They don't even report on what's going on in Yemen anymore. The worst humanitarian crisis on earth, again brought to you by the West. Obama, the Nobel Peace of Crap Prize winner, they launched that war out of Washington, D.C., and the United States supported the Yemen war when the Saudis announced it, the ambassador, right out of Washington, D.C. And then the UK selling them weapons, Spain selling them weapons. And it doesn't even make the news. Humanitarian crises are all over the globe. It's exploding, and they're not addressing it. The way they're going to address it is more military crackdowns, more murders, and another one of our top trends for 2020 is off with their heads 2.0, because the people have had it with the 1% and the elites running and ruining their lives. And all of them, these movements going on, the demonstrations, the riots, the civil wars. Name me one leader. Hong Kong, Spain, Lebanon, Bolivia, Chile, Colombia, Peru, Algeria, Zimbabwe, Sudan, Cameroon. Can't name me a leader. They're all independently led movements. That's what makes them so powerful. You can't take out the top. It doesn't fall from the top.
Absolutely. And just to pick up on something you said here, it's disgusting over here right now. We've got a world heavyweight championship fight coming up at the weekend, and I love my boxing, but they're having this fight over in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, and it's like a PR exercise. They're lording over how great it is in this country, and how westernized it's become. Come on over, holiday here, it's great. And all the while, like you say, there's people dying in Yemen from bombs that British taxpayers' money has funded. It's the
Yep.
inversion, Gerald.
It's murder.
Yeah.
It's murder. What makes it any different? They a guy, by the way, who knife attack in London last week. What makes it any different than, I don't like that guy Gaddafi. I want him out of there. I don't care who you kill. I want him out of there. I don't like that guy Assad. I want him out of there. I don't like that guy Hussein. I want him out of there. What makes the murderers the Obamas, the Camerons, the Blairs, the Bushes, the rest of them? What makes them any different than some other person murdering people that they don't like? And what's being lost in all of this is who's caused this so-called terrorism. It's the Western nations by invading the Eastern nations. This is merely the 10th crusade. If a foreign nation came into the UK, invaded it, bombed it into destruction, into total ruin, would the people living there want to get even with the people that did it? Did anybody ever hear you reap what you sow?
Exactly. And they know that. They know that it's a perpetual kind of cycle. They know that this keeps this thing going, that funds the military-industrial complex. But let's get into 2020 then. Is there anything at all that we can be optimistic about going into the new year, Gerald?
Yeah, there are a number of things. One of them, we're calling it the roaring 2020s. The last century's gone. It's a whole new world. It's as different as it was in 1920 than to 1880. They didn't have electric. They didn't have refrigeration. They didn't have automobiles. They didn't have airplanes. And that's as different as it is now in 2020 to the last generations, my generation. And so it's a whole new world, and they're looking for something new. And they want to be uplifted. Like you began by saying, how depressing and the fear going on in the UK and how it continually goes down on. And they just keep bringing people down all over the world. The people want to be lifted up. The entrepreneurs who know how to do that are going to cash in big time. They're looking for a whole new sound, style, entertainment, you name it, a whole different direction. The roaring 2020s. And those that capitalize on it are not going to only enrich themselves financially. It'll be great for society.
And of course, over in the US, we're going to have the build up to what is going to be the theater of Trump versus whoever. I mean, is there any hope politically in your country right now, Gerald? I don't go for left or right. I think they're all criminals. They're all psychopaths. What's your take, man?
They're all criminals and they're all psychopaths.
Yeah, exactly.
And sociopaths and egomaniacs and pathological liars. Yeah, they always say, they promise something, but when they get in, they don't do it. Yeah, because they're pathological liars. They know how to lie very well. People believe them, and they could care less. That's who they are. They're mentally deranged people. No, whoever gets elected they're merely the leader of the gang. And the gangs of murderers and thieves. And that's not empty rhetoric. Too big to fail, stealing our money to give it to the banksters. Federal Reserve dumped in over $29 trillion in just 3 years, according to the Levy Institute, to bail out the banks. There's no such thing in capitalism as too big to fail. They're thieves. They keep stealing our dough. And they're murderers, all the wars that they start. So whoever gets elected is going to be the leader of the gang. And right now, we have Trump again winning in 2020, considering who the front runners are. And it all goes to the swing states. It's not a popular vote. And so there's no way the swing states are going to vote for a Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren or even a Joe Biden. And that's going to turn real dirty as it unfolds if he's the nominee, because of all the dirty deals that he's done to enrich his boy and others, that are members of the club. So Biden, he's weak to begin with, and you're not going to get a lot of young people going out to vote for old Joe. So it looks like Trump again in 2020. There's always the wild card. That's why I never, when people say, I'm a futurist, I say, no, no one could predict the future. I'm a trend forecaster. I show where the current events that are forming future trends are leading us. And so there's always wild cards, black swan events, and there's no greater a wild card than the Trump card.
Oh, absolutely. And, there's always talk of economic collapse all the time. It's always rumbling on. Sometimes it's louder, then it dies away. But from your point of view, looking at what you know from the past and where we are now, and I know there'll be listeners out there maybe worried about the banks. We've seen what happened the last time. Your money isn't safe there. We've spoke about that before. There's Bitcoin, there's gold, there's this or that. What should people be looking at, in your opinion?
Well, again, they really need to be looking at the data. And when you look at the data, whether it's trade slowing down globally, autos, it's a big one to look at. Auto sales are off around the world because you look at home sales. That's what the most expense goes into for a family or a person. The next one is an automobile, and the automobile sales are way down. You take a trip to India. That was the fastest growing economy in the world. Now it's been slowing down for 5 consecutive quarters. And so what does that mean? Well, look at their auto industry. It's down 25%. Car sales are down 25%. That's just auto sales. You throw the motorcycle sales, which are a big part of it, that's even down a lot more. Has nothing to do with a trade war. India's not involved in a trade war. Their economy's going down just like all of them. They've been artificially propped up. You have over 100,000 auto workers and related in India that are out of work. Audi announcing what? 10,000 people getting fired. One company after another. Those are the things to look at. And then you look at the equity markets. What's pushing them up? How long could they be sustained? So we're saying that the economy is going to melt into recession, not in the United States so fast, but the rest of the world in 2020. By 2021, we'll be in the greatest depression. It'll be worse than anything that anyone could ever imagine, worse than in modern history. And just to make the point really clear, we already mentioned all the places where you're seeing revolts, revolutions, demonstrations, and riots. Think about it. In 1930, there were 2 billion people on the planet. In 90 years, we added 5.5 billion people. All right? Where are they going to get the jobs? How are you going to put down the revolts of these many people? It's out of control. Immigration, haven't seen anything yet. You think you're going to want to stay in a country that's being destroyed, bombed out, violence, corruption, crime? No, this is going down big, and the global leaders, they just had the NATO meeting. There's no reason for NATO. It's a waste of money. This war is, as I said, it's going to be the last world war. These ships are antiquated. They're battleships for the 21st century. Laser technology, hypersonic weapons, and all of the drones. Could you imagine all of a sudden 10, 20,000, 30,000, 40,000, 50,000 drones flying over a country and dropping chemical warfare and you name whatever else? You're not going to shoot them down. Cyber warfare, boom, you bring down the whole system. Generals are always fighting the last war. In 2000, I was brought to Virginia Military Institute, VMI, to talk about new millennium warfare to the generals. These aren't the brightest cats on the planet. I mean, they got their trip and it's fighting. But after that, strategic planning isn't one of their greater games. And I say that in the United States, they haven't won a war since World War II. So save the attitude, the guys that say you know best.
No, absolutely. And add to all of that the artificial intelligence that will take control away from the generals and be in control of all of the things you were talking about there. And it's AI as well as the robotics. That really is going to have an impact going into the future. And a lot of talk about a universal basic income, something like that. What's your thoughts on that, Gerald?
I'm not in favor of it. I'm really not. I am in favor of bringing the tax rates down or back to when they used to be during the Eisenhower administration, and that was for the extremely wealthy to be paying a 90% tax rate. You got a guy like this Bloomberg running for president now in the United States. He's worth over $50 billion. What democracy? Shove it. Like, I got the money, I'll buy my way in. And so, to me, also, the deregulation that prevented the big monopolies from taking over. And now you have monopolies from high tech to high industry to retail, you name it. They've put the average person out of business. And all we've become are plantation workers on the multinational plantation of Slavelandia. You got 26 people, according to the Oxfam report, that have more money than half the world's population combined. In the United States, you have 3 people: Bezos, the Amazon guy, Gates, the Microsoft man, and Buffett, the gambler. They got more money than half of America's population combined, and they could say the crap about all the philanthropic money they're putting in there. It's total BS. It's chump change. Oh, we're going to get rid of half of it by the time we die. Yeah. What are you going to do? Vaccinate everybody around the world? You call that progress? There was a guy named Carnegie. Yeah, he was a slimer, but he also built a public library system of America with all these gorgeous buildings. These billionaires all they're interested in is making more money. No, I don't believe in universal income. Everybody has to earn their own. And the people that can't earn their own because of mental or physical problems, those are the ones that I'm there to support.
Yeah, it sounds very good. It sounds almost that Kumbaya moment. We'll all sing around the campfire. But I don't like the idea of being entirely dependent on the same psychopaths that we've been talking about here today. And, just thinking about what you were saying there, these big tech companies, I basically look at them, Gerald, and you can disagree with me, but for me, they're almost like a public extension or a corporate extension of the government, because you can't put a cigarette paper in between the two of them. And we've gone into all of this like mice into a trap. We've become addicted to the technology. We've become addicted to the social media. And now all of that, it seems to be coming to a head. And I think that's because it ties in with what you're saying. When people have got nothing left to lose, they lose it. And these people, they're not stupid by any means. And all these kind of social engineers, the Tavistock, you name it, they know what point in history that we're approaching right now. And I would just get you to speak to the importance of where we are in history right now, right? Because I fear if we go too much further, i.e., we're on the cusp of taking chips in our brain and giving up our free thought, for goodness sake, there is no coming back. And I hate to sound pessimistic, but I'll get your thoughts on that.
I agree with you. There is no coming back. I mean, you can't learn how to read a map. You gotta ask everything for you. You don't think for yourself anymore. They're thinking for you. And look at the people that are thinking for you. Look what they look like. Look at what a Gates looks like. Look at all these tech geeks. There's not an ounce of boogie, not a drop of jive, no passion, no soul. You could take your AI, and AI is artificial intelligence is as great as artificial flavors. Yeah, it has its place, but it doesn't take the place of the heart, the soul, the mind, and the spirit. And they're convincing people that it does. So the people are all losing it. And they're just becoming robotics to it's high-tech heroin. I don't own a cell phone. I own a cell phone. When I remember, I put it in the glove compartment of my car, or else I forget it. And if it's in there, it's dead because I never use it. I probably made about 15, 20, maybe 30 calls the whole year on a cell phone because I know how deadly they are. I know about radio frequency radiation. Been studying it since 1994 when I did work for the Cellular Telecommunications Industry Association, back in the day when they had these big things in the trunks of cars with aerials. So people are addicted to it. And just like my generations, our parents' generation, they were all smoking. Everybody was smoking. And they used to have these ads. Doctors smoke Camels more than any other cigarette. So it was addictive. They knew it, but they couldn't break the habit. This addiction is as deadly, and deadlier in a lot of ways, because they're robbing the people of their individual freedom. It's going to get worse, as I see it, unless there is a evolution. And one of the top trends we have is elegance, for people to rise to higher levels. You get to the best place that you can, spiritually, emotionally, physically. Wear it, live it, taste it, cook it, make it. Raise the bar, because when you raise the bar, you don't take crap for what's going down lower. And to me, go back to the 1930s, the Great Depression, the hottest, happiest music America ever knew, swing time. Look at those old pictures, the Great Depression. Look how people are dressed up. And, by the way, the blacks were leading the charge. So, and they were the poorest, and there was still segregation in this country, big time. And they were leading the change in style, in elegance, and in music. The rest followed. So you don't have to be at the top to make it happen. You have to have it in your soul to make it happen.
I want to thank Gerald for his time today, and folks, check out the 3rd of December issue of the Trends Journal. It's right what it says on the cover. It says it's going down. It's on the streets and in numbers. Here's what happens next. Well, I hope you all enjoyed that, folks. I'll be along live in just a moment. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, I'm here, I'm live, and that there was Gerald Celente. Oh yes, indeed. Now, Gerald was almost live, full disclosure. I spoke to Gerald, or I wrapped up speaking to Gerald, about 1 hour before we went on air today. Because of the time difference, you know, Gerald was very kind of affording me some of his time to come on the show. And I always like to have Gerald on this time of year because, like I say, we're all at a time when we're about to look back on the year that has just been. And we're also on the cusp of 2020. Can you believe it? 2020. 2020. I remember growing up, I used to think about the year 2000 and it seemed like, wow, just donkeys away. And yet here we are now, 2020, and I get it. Time moves faster when you get older. And at the grand ripe old age of 43, not old age, ripe old age, yeah, I can definitely attest to that. And as time gets faster, things get crazier. And Gerald, he has been saying it for some time, and he's right. And we're getting close, because when people have nothing left to lose, they do lose it. And it is off with their heads 2.0. How do I know that? Because to learn what's going on now and to project or forecast, as Gerald does, what's going on in the future, we must be keen students of history. Now, I get it. It's really hard to tell what's true and what's not out there. But we can see that these cycles exist. And I tell you, look around the world. Look at all the craziness going on. Look at the woketopia stuff that we talk about. Tell me, can it get far worse than this? Is this just another bump in the road on the story of humanity, civilization? I don't know. Feels to me like we're getting to that point, and I have to apologise if it did sound rather pessimistic, but what you heard in the first part of the show was two guys being brutally honest about what we see ahead. Yeah, I like to take a look at the positive side of everything these days because I'm very conscious about what you put out. You know, it does have an effect on the world around us. But at the same time, that doesn't mean I stick my fingers in my ears, close my eyes, put my head between my knees and stick my head up where the sun don't shine and ignore everything. Not at all. Not at all. But Gerald mentioned World War III. Do you think we're close to coming to that critical juncture in our story? I've looked at this over the years and I ended up backing away from it because it was getting very old. I used to do shows all the time. Road to World War III, Ooga Booga, it's coming. Russia and Ukraine, all the other flashpoints we've had. This happening in Syria, that happening over there. You've been there. Most of you have been here for the ride. And a lot of the time, I think the media help to keep us in this mindset where we're always on the cusp of something even bigger, and that fear vibe that they try and hold us in that. And of course, the military-industrial complex, they always need a bit of conflict because that's where they make their money. And it sounds to me, listening to Gerald, there we go, Lothar. And Lothar, thank you for the super chat earlier
Smoke
on
weed
as
every
well.
day keeps the doctor away.
Absolutely fantastic. That's the super chat there. And please remember, folks, the home of the Kev Baker Show will always be tfrlive.com, Truth Frequency Radio. And I encourage anyone who is maybe watching the simulcast, or if you can, maybe you're on iHeartRadio. I get it if you're in the car. But there's a chat room at tfrlive.com where I'm hanging out right now with some really great people. And I'll be giving them a shout out after the break. So if you want your shout out, head on over to tfrlive.com/chat. Thank you very much, Lothar. So yeah, what I thought we would do now is we'll take a look at Gerald's website. And maybe some of you honestly don't appreciate just what a track record this guy has. You know, I get it. Everyone calls themselves the number one in the world at whatever their particular profession is. But Gerald's somebody that can back that up time and time and time again. And he's often been well ahead of the curve when it comes to major events, major trends in culture as well. And that's why I always like to bring on the very best to give you their forecast. It's not predictions. It's not some ooga booga woo-woo going on. There's no crystal balls. It's all very analytical, looking at the data. And the data is painting a pretty grim picture. But yeah, every week now, Gerald publishes something called the Trends Journal. We're going to take a little look at that over here right now. Let me just bring that up. Here it is here, and you can get to the website, trendsresearch.com. And then this week's edition is called It's Going Down. It's on the streets and in the numbers. here's what's next. When I went to the BBC website today, I must admit, just what Gerald was talking about in one of his prior videos. He was talking about how France was going to, get even worse, the protesting there, despite the fact it's been going on what feels like forever now, the yellow vests. And then, sure enough, I went to the BBC website. We can go and look at it in a little minute. And there it was, France suffering some of their worst ever protesting in years. Just one example of Gerald being spot on. But yeah, you come down here, there's various segments to this. I don't want to get into too many of them. But as we said in the video or in the interview, one of the segments is called Welcome to the New World Disorder. Because it is. Everything seems to be in a bit of flux right now. It seems really, really, really chaotic. And I'm keen to read more about this. And if you want to read more about it, check out the Trends Journal, okay? But scrolling down quickly gives you an economic update, a geopolitical roundup, a trends eye view. And then there, and taking a closer look at things called the digital currency futures, subprime loans that steer the auto industry, and something called car crash. And then it goes into the presidential reality show, high tech. And it's high tech where I want to take us next. Because Gerald was talking a lot about future warfare. And we were also talking about the impact that robotics and AI is already having on the workplace and is set to continue to do so. And I brought up in the show that, even George Orwell, and I think you have to appreciate that George Orwell had a bit of an inside track. Let's just say he had the ear, or people in important places had his ear, and were giving him some of the agenda that's been in place for some time, folks, over the ages. And even with that inside knowledge, even Orwell couldn't take it as far as where we are now, right? Okay, he hit 2 + 2 = 5, and ridiculously, Common Core math in America, that's the thing. Sex or biology no longer determines sex. Black is white, white is black, upside down bizarro land, right? Well, I found a story to coincide with just that today. And there are countries out there that aren't losing their crap quite as fast as you see in the West. And one country in particular, and people are going to love this because they'll think I'm shilling, is Russia, right? And Russia, Putin sees what's happening. He doesn't want any of the nonsense that's crept its way into our schools over in his schools. We've seen how over here in the West with big tech, harder and harder to say what you like. Censorship on the rise. The Ministry of Truth just around the corner. Alternative facts, all this kind of thing. And even Putin is saying, well, we need to do something here too. And get a load of this headline from Reuters. Check this out, folks. Russia to upgrade homegrown encyclopedia after Putin bans Wikipedia. Yeah, Putin's had enough of all the crap kind of fakey news stuff that gets onto Wikipedia. And he's going, no, enough of that. We're going to write our own, we're going to keep our own history the way it is. We're not going to have it sanitized and gradually affected by these Mandela effects that go on. And I wonder if Mandela effects are something that happens to Russian people. Just a side thought there. But I thought this tied in perfectly with the times that we live. This post-truth world, as they call it. Russia is to step up a new online site for its national encyclopedia after President Vladimir Putin said Wikipedia was unreliable and should be replaced. I hope to goodness I don't have a Wikipedia page. I remember Clyde Lewis having a story about his Wikipedia page one time. And this is the thing with Wikipedia, folks. Anything can go on there. Now, I use it myself as a reference point, but it must never be your one-stop shop. Always follow the links, go and do other research on the back of it. Because now and again, and it's getting better, I would say, it's getting better, but now and again you will find that it is rather erroneous. So it says the move will ensure people can find reliable information that is constantly updated on the basis of scientifically verified sources of knowledge. Now, that's a dangerous path as well, though, right? Because, scientifically verified sources of knowledge, who verifies these people? I would imagine it's the government. So verified government spokespeople will tell you they're to be considered the sources of knowledge. In fact, doesn't sound too different to what we've got going on over here, actually. Could I call that the Ministry of Truth? Yeah, indeed. Sounds like it. But Putin last month proposed replacing the crowdsourced online encyclopedia with an electronic version of the Great Russian Encyclopedia, the successor to the Soviet Union's main encyclopedia. And I wonder how many episodes, unfortunate episodes, were conveniently erased or didn't make it into the new Russian encyclopedia. Yeah, I laugh and I joke about Russia, and when you take it by a case-by-case basis, I would take Putin over half of the people that you see here in the West, right? But at the same time, he's a leader, the same as the rest of them. He came from the spook agencies. I tell you what, when you got something like this, well, we'll go on. This, at any rate, would be reliable information offered in a modern form, Putin said. In 2015, Russia briefly blocked the Russian language version of Wikipedia for an article containing information on cannabis under legislation banning sites with drug-related material. Now, Moscow has also introduced tougher online controls over the Russian segment of the internet so that it can keep on functioning, even if cut off from foreign infrastructure. Now, that's a step that's been made in the event that there is ever some kind of conflict or cataclysm or something else. But that's a move that they've made to almost firewall or at least build their network that isn't reliant on anything over here. It says the Great Russian Encyclopedia is already available in a basic electronic format. The new online portal will cost 2 billion rubles. That's $31 million. Sergei Krivats, an editor for the Great Russian Encyclopedia, was quoted as saying on November the 21st. Now, the government will also set up a national research and education centre for the Great Russian Encyclopedia. The resolution signed by Prime Minister Dmitry Medvedev. And this story has been relied to clarify in headline that Putin is critical of Wikipedia. So he's critical, yes, just in case anyone couldn't actually translate that Russia to upgrade homegrown encyclopedia after Putin pans Wikipedia. Obviously, this word here, pans, troubled some people. Obviously, they couldn't understand what it meant. So we had to put a little bit in brackets explaining it at the bottom. No wonder Putin wants to get away from this madness. But no, what do you think? Because there's two ways of looking at it, right? Either he's staunchly nationalist and he's very proud of the Russian history, and he's very aware of the fact that when you get these Western sites in there, maybe a lot of them, shall we say the bigger ones, have connections, have tentacles into the alphabet agencies that he himself was once a part of, don't forget. You know, he was in East Germany back in the day. And he was in the FSB as well. I believe he was just in the FSB kind of when it was changing over. And of course, he came out of nowhere. He was this nothing guy. Just this kind of weird, awkward, boring looking dude that took over the helm after Gorbachev. And of course, after that, or was it Yeltsin he took over? Yeah, I think it was Boris Yeltsin, wasn't it? And yeah, after that, listen, there's a whole story behind Putin that, as much as I love the guy, interesting character. And apart from like the eyes wide shut parties, I haven't seen any rumours of that. I mean, he's still pretty much a dodgy dude, okay? Dodgy dude. So what do you think, though? Is it like a Ministry of Truth? Are they only going to give them the party line on what history was? Will eventually that Soviet era be written out of the Russian history? Or, like I say, is he going to keep it absolutely pure and pristine, like the Library of Alexandria / Russian edition online? You get me? I don't know. Two ways of looking at everything. And you know how I roll. And it bores you for me to keep on saying it, but I'm always keen and aware that there's new listeners out there. And I'm not telling you what to think. Not at all. I just find stories, headlines, patterns along the way. Dare I say it, coincidence? Now, that was a good show last night. And what I do is I throw it all out there. I can look at things 360, upside, downside, both sides, you name it. It's all just to give you the information. And yeah, I'll give you my opinion, what I think is more likely or less likely. But that means nothing in the grand scheme of things because it's as equal to anyone else's opinion out there. And it's based on all of the information that I try to get to you. And like Wikipedia, never take a word I say for granted. And I don't mind being wrong. I don't mind being wrong. And I'll try and correct myself as much as I can. And I'll never deliberately mislead anyone. So when I do trip up, I expect you to fact check me. I expect you to come and say, Kev, you might want to look at that again. And I'll go and look at it again and I'll hold my hands up and I'll do the hardest thing for any content creator or anyone in this alternative media. I don't know what we call ourselves anymore. But to say I was wrong, you would think it would be career suicide, the way some people take it. But we all get things wrong. That's okay. It's correcting them, learning from them, and moving on. That's the main thing, right? And talking about moving on, we're kind of getting into the future warfare, stuff like that, when I was talking to Gerald. And we see a lot of stuff coming from DARPA, etc. Scotty Lopez, who was on the stream earlier on today, absolutely fantastic stream. If you didn't catch that, dear Lord, poor Scott is dealing with yet more paranormal activity around his house, and it involves people outside of his family that are now witnessing and experiencing things. It's the weirdest stuff in the world. And folks, TFR has got it all, because tomorrow, right after Freaky Friday, you know how Paranormal Portal opens up right after we go off air? Well, Scotty Lopez, he is going to be jumping on to Paranormal Portal as the very, very special guest of my good friend Brent Thomas. The man with the #1 paranormal show on the network, Paranormal Portal. Yes, indeed. So that's something to look forward to tomorrow night. And of course, don't forget, folks, while I am throwing it out there, Freaky Friday tomorrow before the Paranormal Portal, tfrlive.com.